Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show demo on how to create a Kubernetes cluster using Minikube. Actually, I'm going to use a Kubernetes.io. They created a nice UI online terminal for our practice on Kubernetes cluster. Let's move on to next slide. I'm going to work on these six main topics like creating a Kubernetes cluster and deploying an application and how to export that application and how to expose the application publicly and how to scale the application when the number of users increased and how to update the application. Okay, I'll try to show a little bit practical and theoretical. Let's move on to some theoretical. Okay, for example, this is like a Kubernetes cluster, for example. Okay, to create this Kubernetes cluster, there are many ways. Like, so we are going to use a mini Minikube. Okay, we are going to use Minikube and kubectl, which is for interacting with Kubernetes cluster. In Kubernetes cluster, usually it has one master and slave. Okay, the master may be three master for medium cluster, and if it is a big cluster, when they are creating, they go for five masters. Okay? For example, this one is master and slave. Okay, uh, mm, using when kubectl is trying to connect it to Kubernetes cluster, it will communicate with the master. Master has Kubernetes API. Its main contact is kube API. Oops, this size is too big. Will be inside master, and when try to communicate, master will be trying to communicate with slave because the master has control management and the service everything, because master can communicate to the slave depends on the slave usage and RAM and memory. It will scale to another slave for the work. When master communicate with the slave, uh, the contact point will be main contact point will be uh, kubelet. Okay, okay. Let's move on to demo. So I think everyone understood a little bit. I'll tell you one more time. This is a Kubernetes cluster we are trying to create. This Kubernetes cluster can be created in different way. The approach we are going to go for Minikube. The Minikube is like in one system we can create as a cluster with a virtual machine as a node. It will create a cluster. Okay. Mostly the Minikube is used for a developer, and if you want to create a Kubernetes cluster in any cloud, for example in AWS, you go for COPS. Okay, and for on-premise cluster, if you can go for admin. Okay, and yeah, let's move on to demo. Now we are going to create a Kubernetes cluster. Our goal using Minikube. You can just go for the kubernetes.io for the practice section. Once you are familiar with the basic um, basic thing about the Kubernetes cluster. You can try to install Kubernetes cluster in any cloud using COPS. Uh, In my next video, I'll try to do it for you. So we are going to check Minikube version. They made a nice interactive terminal to practice for us. Minikube version. Okay, we'll start that Minikube. It takes a while. Continue. You can see here kubectl version. As I said before, with Minikube we can create a Kubernetes cluster. It has been done. Now we are going to use kubectl, which is like a terminal to connect to talk with Kubernetes cluster. It will check kubelet version. One good thing, when you download Minikube, it has a kubelet. You can see here the kubelet is now configured to Minikube. Okay, let's check the kubelet version. Okay, I think some spelling mistake. You can see kubelet version. This has a client version and server version successfully. Now go to, just clear this. Now we'll check about the Kubernetes cluster information. Okay, go back to our diagram one more time. So we are done with this part. Okay, we are done with this part. So we are going to check Kubernetes cluster information using kubelet. kubectl cluster info. You can see here Kubernetes master is running at this port, and kubedns is running in this proxy. Okay, let's move on to nodes. Okay, nodes is nothing but the master and the slave. The slave is a node. Okay, for example, this node has number of ports inside. Okay, like the small ports. Inside that port, n number of containers will be there. For example, these are containers. Okay, let's check cluster nodes. You can see here it's ready and the role is master. Move on to next. Yeah, now we successfully completed creation of creating a Kubernetes cluster. Okay, let's move on to next exercise. Continue to model 2. In this section, we are going to deploy an application in a cluster. Okay, let's start. So we did this previously.